If you're in heaven, then you'll forgive me, dear, 'cause that's what they do up there. If you're in hell, what can I say? You probably deserved it anyway.
Okay, Bill, uh, you're starting to irritate me a little bit, and I'll tell you why. You put some work on my plate about a week or so ago, introducing me to a band's been around, Wilco, and I really, really learned to enjoy those albums as I was listening to them and getting prepared for this. And then you toss a guy out there by the name of Nick Cave, who I've been hearing about forever, but I've never explored any of his music. I've heard a random song here and there over the years. But then I went in and dove into his new album, Carnage, that he recorded with Warren Ellis. And I got to tell you, man, there is a whole lot to like about that one. I like this. So now not only do I have to go do some catch-up work with Wilco, now you've also put Nick Cave on my plate. And it's like, you know, you're not doing me any favors with my time management skills.
Well, I'll apologize, but only slightly, because I think one of the interesting things about Nick Cave is his relationship to time itself, and how he uses that as one of his key themes. So you mentioned Carnage, which is a recent album. I'll just kind of give you a quick overview of Nick Cave himself, which is actually his name. He's from Australia. And like a lot of us, he was very much inspired by the punk movement that started in a couple of key places, but one of them was in Australia. And there was a band in Australia called the Saints. And he was enamored of the Saints. And this was back in, I would say, about 1976 or 77. And there's a great picture of him right at the edge of the stage. The stage is very low because this is not a big band, but it's a big band in Australia. And he's looking at Chris Bailey, who just recently died, who is one of the co-singers of the band. And you can see his inspiration, almost, literally see it. It's starting right there, 1977. And then he does what lots of people do, forms a band. And his first band is the Birthday Party, which is kind of the first wave of post-punk bands. So very chaotic, very interesting, but it's kind of a melange of all of the things that you would expect when you hear somebody who's enamored with kind of high energy, high speed, almost a violent sort of approach to music. And his band is made up of a collection of characters who are really quite talented by accident, and also who are people who he engages with for quite some time. And one of the key ones is Mick Harvey. So anyway, typical story, band moves to London, has moderate to negligible success, breaks up, has the usual issues, drugs, lack of popularity. Cave kind of reinvents himself in Berlin with Mick Harvey, who's one of the guys from the Birthday Party, and Blixa Bellegarde, who is a German musician who is, let's see if I can say it right, Einstürstande Neubauten, a noise band from Germany, quite interesting, a band I always liked. And he forms a new group called the Bad Seeds. So Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And for years, we don't have time to go into this, but for years he puts together one of the, solid gold canons of music, as far as I'm concerned, from the mid 80s through maybe 2006. You could pick a record out from that era, and you will find there might be variants in terms of the sound a little bit, but you're going to find that kind of a gothic very supernatural, emotionally drenched love, death, hate, passion, but very scholarly kind of approach to this, sung in Nick's inimitable croon. And he's a very distinctive character. So if you'll see him, you will not forget him. He's very tall. He has dyed jet black hair that, as he's kind of gone a little short in front, like many of us have, he still kind of combs it back, and he looks like some kind of Elvis from hell, sort of. And he wears suits and high collared shirts that are, I would say, illogically unbuttoned, beyond a button that I would do or be able to carry off. And he looks very, I will say, sleazy is sort of a bad word, but that's kind of what he comes across as. But he, on stage with the Bad Seeds, who are this kind of very dramatic, very powerful rock and roll band, can kind of put together this quite compelling collection of music. And that's his history. And I don't want to talk about his history. I want to talk about right now. And right now, I'm going to categorize from about 2015 to the present. And over the course of that time, he has started to move from what his stock and trade was, which was kind of narrative songs, to something that is much more personally engaged, much more abstract, maybe even fractured. And he started with an album called Push the Sky Away. This sort of started this trajectory that he's on. And it was a good mix. I mean, it's still kind of the classic Bad Seed sound, but by the time the next record, which is where I want to start with, Skeleton Tree, comes out in 2016, the Seeds are very low key. The music is very unadorned. It's all really focused on the lyrics and the atmosphere. And what's important to me about this record is it came out in 2016. He had written all the material, and he had was already in the studio when one of his twin sons, who was 15 at the time, fell off a cliff in their hometown of Brighton, England, and he died. And the impact on Cave and his family comes through in this record, even though the record doesn't really have anything to do with the death per se. It's about the kinds of things that you feel when you're feeling about that you're getting older, that things are kind of leaving your life, and there's a lot of resonance. And Cave would even say, in retrospect, that there was sort of a foreboding feeling about the songs. The songs come from somewhere, and it sort of alluded to things that could happen, but not to his son's death. It's a very powerful record, but the next one, Ghosteen, is even more powerful. It's even more stripped down. So you can't imagine that the guy who was singing, Release the Bats, with a punk rant and rave in 25 years earlier, is the guy who's sitting at a piano with very minimal other instrumentation. And this is more specifically addressing the death of his son, with, again, not mentioning it at all, but talking about the things that people, all of us, can start to feel happening, things going away. What happens when things go away? And it's not so much about death per se, it's more about the ambiguity of whatever comes next, whatever that is. And the band is, it's there. You can feel the support, but it's not a rock and roll album as a Bad Seeds album would have been 5 years earlier. And after that, Ghosteen is a record, set up like in the typical era. You put the record out, you're ready to tour. But of course, that record came out in 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020. So the COVID lockdown stopped the touring, and Cave was looking for a way to somehow connect with his audience. And what he decided to do was to record a live album in the Alexandra Palace, which is a music venue in London, and he did it solo. So he's at a piano. This is all done live and was streamed live, and the record was eventually released later that year. And he goes through a number of his songs. It's about almost a 90-minute performance. So he just plays, it's just him. There's no one else there. And you can see that the band is not necessary for the songs that he's singing. And the songs come from across his career, but they're very, very compelling, very intimate. And you can really start to see, just how philosophical Cave is. This is why he's sort of important to me, because of his approach to life and longing and grief and impermanence. And of course, he has time during lockdown. So after doing the live show, he and Warren Ellis, who's one of his key collaborators from the Bad Seeds, they put together the record, Scott, that you mentioned, which is Carnage, which is very minimalist, as his last couple of records were, and also kind of contains a sense of foreboding. Very, I won't say it's depressing, but there's a melancholy there that is kind of the hallmark of the late period Nick Cave, without an awful lot of relief. But there are some beautiful songs there that really benefit from this kind of approach. And then most recently, just this year, actually, I think this month, he released what I would view as sort of an EP, although it's an album length thing. It's called 7 Psalms, and it's a collection of little 1 or 2 minute vignettes. There's sort of spoken word things with a minimal accompaniment, again, with Warren Ellis' involvement. And, there's a lot of the same sort of feeling about, viewing life through a perspective of a certain amount of hope and a certain amount of acceptance in terms of, what life hands you. So it's interesting to me to have followed Cave on this whole adventure and seen him go through the usual rock and roll elements, and then kind of come out on the other end as sort of a statesman. Like, I don't think he would like, but it's, someone who you could look at and feel you could speak with him, and he would have some things that he could provide to you that would be very useful. And kind of as a last point, I would say that he actually does that very literally. So he has a website called the Red Hand Files, which is named after one of the songs that he's done. And he encourages people to write in and ask any kind of question, and he will pick questions and answer them. And he has done that over the last, I would say, about maybe 2 or 3 years. And what he provides is a combination of very insightful, perspectives of his own, a good dose of humor. He's got a very wry and interesting take on things, but he tries to be as honest as possible. And again, if you knew Nick Cave like I did, of 25 or 35 years ago, you would not have imagined that he could be kind of your agony uncle who would be happy to help you kind of navigate some challenges. And I remember one letter in particular, email, a girl had written to him and said, I'm 16 and I was wondering if you could talk to your 16-year-old self, what would you say? And he gives a very measured response back, very considerate and thoughtful, and says essentially, what anyone would say, which is, the 16-year-old, he would want to tell him things to protect him, but he would also tell him that he's sitting here right now, the older 16-year-old who's just really the same person who's just 50 years older, sitting in the kitchen with the sun coming through and being relatively happy. And that if he did too many things that avoided the things that he was trying to protect himself from, he wouldn't be the person who's 60 plus years old sitting in the kitchen with the sun coming in and feeling relatively happy. So anyway, Nick Cave is probably my favorite living musician, composer, artist. there's a lot to like, and you can kind of pick your period. If you don't like this kind of stripped down stuff, you can go back to the mid period, and you can go to the birthday party and you can rock your little hearts out, because I know I like to do that too. But sometimes I need to sit and think about what the heck is actually going on, and Nick can help you do that.
Yeah, it's Carnage. I love this album, but and I also listened to the live one he did, just solo. Yeah, I listened to Carnage, and I really liked Warren Ellis's contribution there. And that was a difference between that one and the other one I listened to, which was the one from the piano ballads.
Yeah, I mean the challenge would be, if you're joining Nick at this particular period, you're getting a very minimalist approach. So it can be, I won't say daunting so much as just, it's kind of the same stuff. And, there's only so much you can do with the piano. So it's all about, whether the songs can carry your interest level. And sometimes, when they're stripped down, they don't have a lot more going there. So you're really kind of focusing on the lyrics, which to be are kind of critical, because
well, yeah, you're focusing on the composition itself, without all the adornments, and I think it's great. And I remember back in the 90s that was a fairly popular thing to do. I remember a few people did that back in the day. I know Graham Parker released an album like that. John Cale released an album like that, and a few others. And I think of Robin Hitchcock, but I enjoy it. But then this one, the Carnage, is like I say, I love this thing. But I also noticed that he has never really released a solo album outside of that concert one that he did. Everything he's released has always been with the Bad Seeds, right? And that surprised me. But he's done a lot of work with Ellis on soundtracks. I don't have it in front of me, but I remember counting about 10, close to a dozen soundtrack albums that they put together.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's been done. They're very good at kind of that atmospheric approach that works well as a soundtrack. Actually, if anyone has watched Peaky Blinders on Netflix, the theme song is Nick Cave's "The Red Hand File." Speaking of, the Right Red Hand. I'm sorry. So that's how you can get an entree into the Cave world.
And I noticed that one of his more popular songs is a song that wasn't on an album, but he wrote it for a Harry Potter movie. Oh, children, yeah.
Lift up your voice, lift up your voice. Children, rejoice. The cleaners had done their job on you. They're hip to it, man, they're in the groove. They've holed you down, you're good as new. They're lining up to expect
you. He's done a couple of his most popular song is with everybody's favorite Australian, I guess after Olivia Newton-John, which is Kylie Minogue. And it was very popular, Where the Red Roses Grow, I think is the name of it. So that merits some attention. And actually, the way she got involved, because she didn't know anything about Nick Cave, really. She was dating Michael Hutchence of In Excess at the time, another Australian. And Cave knew Hutchence. And so he was able to get the song to her, and she loved the song. And she became a fan of the band, but she was very surprised at how they, when she saw what they did. This is the early, kind completely rocking out Bad Seeds, she was sort of afraid.
Yeah.
But he also did a very good song when he was with he actually dated PJ Harvey or Polly Jean Harvey for a brief period, and they did a good song together. I forget the name of it.
I do know that one because I'm a PJ Harvey. I'm a PJ Harvey fan, and actually Mick Harvey, who you mentioned before, has been PJ Harvey's Warren Ellis for several years now. Mick Harvey does a lot of work with her. Yeah, actually, Cave is a godfather to Michael Hutchins's daughter, I see on Wikipedia. And Cave also lost another son earlier this year.
Jethro, yes.
Yeah.
It's I think that was an overdose sort of situation. Yeah, so I mean, he has suffered the kinds of things that a lot of people suffer, and he, unlike a lot of people, is able to turn it into not just art, but a kind of art that really has the level of resonance that I think if you have the time to listen to it, it can be very comforting in a certain way.
Yeah, this is I definitely want to check out more of it, but I can't imagine that I'll hear anything that that will impress me as much as this last one did. But
Well, I mean,
but I'll give it a shot. I mean, where would you
yeah.
let me ask you that this new album Carnage that I like so much, where would you put that in his overall catalog? Where does that land?
It's probably in the top 5, and I would say in part because you need to listen to some of I would say like the Boatman's Call is one of his best high Bad Seeds. So when I talk about the Bad Seeds, it's like their use in the music that he's doing right now is kind of at a lower level in terms of the studio stuff. Now they're on tour, and you can go on YouTube and see just how electric they are. I mean, they are, because they're doing the whole panoply of the career, and so it doesn't necessarily just have to be very minimalist, electronic, glitchy sort of sound collages. It's rock and roll, and when Cave is in gear, and he almost always is, he's a very mesmerizing performer. So you'll see him stalking across the stage. So I would say Carnage is among his very best work, as are the last couple of albums. I mean, but for full appreciation, I would pick like Boatman's Call or From Her to Eternity to kind of give you a sense of how that evolution has occurred, because those are very good records too. I mean, he's hardly done a bad one. There's some that are not quite as compelling perhaps, but only a fan of a certain era would say that some of his other stuff is not as good. So if you really to get the full appreciation, you need to probably pick something. It doesn't even matter what. And
I didn't get the sense that when I was listening to this album and also the piano album, because like I say, I mean, I've heard the random Nick Cave song and the Bad Seeds over the years, and I didn't hear anything here that was really a whole lot different than what I remember hearing from the random Nick Cave stuff before. I mean, it's still the same sort of gothic, sort of overlordish sort of feeling that you get from it, but so there hasn't been any really stylistic move on his part that I can tell, but it still seems solid. It still seems fresh. It still seems fresh. It was really good. Because I know he's been a big influence on a lot of people. Because I've heard a lot of people that that you can say, well, that kind of sounds like Nick Cave, and I'm saying people like, I remember a band called Bauhaus, which kind of has the same song, and I assume it came out of there. But who I think was a big influence on him, because this sounds like because when I was listening to this album, I heard hints of this seed back there as John Cale's solo work. it reminded me a lot of some of Cale's solo work from back in the 70s, same kind of stuff. And even the piano album, I mean, it was, like I say, John Cale recorded that, that same kind of album back in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's sort of like Paris 1919.
Yeah.
Sort of that, you can kind of trace that.
Yeah, the Academy in Peril, and it definitely, you can put them in the same basket. For those of you who know John Cale, that gives you a good reference point there, what this sounds like.